This is the year that you read that Bible through. This is the year that you make your relationship with God as strong as you can get it. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 5. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple. And for his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See you not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of the coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. We got all sorts of evils in this world today that are saying, try this, it'll make you feel better, or try this and never have to worry about your problems again. And when people finally realize what they've done, it hasn't solved a thing. People are so eager to try everything else in this world, but they never give Jesus a try. He's the same God today as He was back in the old days that Peter and John preached about. He's still working miracles today, just like He's working them back then. You can go, you can try those drugs, you can do those things, but I promise they're not going to get you anywhere. They're going to be it's going to dissolve your money. You're going to wonder where your money's going, and you haven't even tried one of the cheapest things ever. All you got to do is come into this church and give yourself to God. It's the most rewarding. It's the most consistent. Now, God's going to make you work for things. He's going to test your faith. Brother Henry's being tested right now. But when we walked in, what little smile he could muster, he said, Brother, since y'all prayed for me this morning, he said, I've gotten better. I've slowly gotten better. I'm believing that man's going to walk through them back doors. He's not going to be helped. I'm believing 2019 is Faith Tabernacle's year. I'm believing that we're going to have people come running through those doors. I believe these altars are going to be full. I believe prayer rooms are going to have to be expanded. I believe classrooms are going to get bigger. But we've got to sell out in 2019, and we got to make our mind up to God that we're standing on this rock and we're not moving. No matter what the devil throws at us, no matter what happens, we're staying here and we're going to build. We've been prophesied to that people are going to be flooding our doors. We've been prophesied to that this building will not be our church building for long. We will move to the other one. You got to understand, though, that with all these major changes coming, with all the people that's going to enter those doors, if we don't have what we got now set in order, it's going to fall to chaos. You hear of big churches every day that go through 2 or 3 splits. All of a sudden, what a church was at 500, they've dropped to 300. What a church was at 300, they've dropped to 150. All because someone gets mad. All because someone gets lazy. All because someone gets inconsistent and can't line up to what the man of God is preaching. The Lord put a man of God in your life for a reason. He put him there to lead, guide, and direct you. Now, the Lord is the one that made him that called him to do that. We can't forget that, and we can't worship our man of God. But our man of God is the messenger of God. What the man of God preaches is what God delivers to him. The advice he gives you, that's what God has told him to give you. We've got to respect our men of God. People are going back, people are so eager to try everything else, but they won't give God a try. He is the way and the truth and the light, and the only light we have in this dark and dreary world, and people won't even give him a chance. They wonder why their marriages are failing. They wonder why their kids are delinquents. They sit and scratch their heads every day wondering where they went wrong, but they never even sit to think about what God could do for them or how God could help them. Somewhere deep inside, we need to find that Job-like mentality. No matter what the devil throws at us this year, we will.
Oh, yes.
We will overcome it. We're not going to quit.
No.
We're not going to. We will be victorious in 2019.
Yes,
I want you to ask yourself right now, what will your mark in 2019 be? If this was your last year, if this was your last service, would you change a thing?
Right.
Would you worship harder?
Come on.
Would you become that true friend to somebody to try to bring them in church?
Hallelujah.
Would you sacrifice stuff today to help someone else find God?
Right.
That's our duty as Christians. But we don't need to focus on someone so much that we forget to look at ourselves.
Come on.
We have to split time. We can be with somebody and help them, but we also have to help ourselves. We can't come running to the pastor over every little problem we got. Even without working a full-time job, he don't have enough hours in a day. When we're trying to get out of church, I mean, we can't have 20 people line up at the door trying to ask him something, trying to say, look, I've got this. You can call him. He'll make a meeting with you. But we can't come to him about our dog running away. I mean, he's got no control over that. He can pray with you that little Fido comes home, but I mean, whether the dog comes back or not, that's up to him. We can't call him when we fall and scratch our knee. I mean, rub some Neosporin on it, put a Band-Aid, wrap it up. I mean, we've got to learn that we have authority in ourselves. We have just as much power that we can kneel down in front of our beds and we can ask God to deliver us. We don't have to call the pastor and get him to pray. We have that power. We've got that privilege. God has gave us that we can take upon ourselves. Sometimes God puts you through something because He wants you to talk to Him. How many hours a day do you spend on your phone talking to Sister so-and-so, or talking to your brother, talking to your sister, talking to your mom, your dad? How many hours do you spend on that phone talking to anybody else?
Think about it.
How many hours do you spend on that phone just playing games? How many hours do you spend at home watching TV? How many hours do you give God a day? And when you go back home tonight, do me a favor, sit in your kitchen or your living room and just write up how many hours a day you do, like on average for certain things. And then I want you to see how much more that is than the time you give God. In 2019, we've got to learn to set some stuff back and pick up a Bible. We've got to learn to set some stuff back and kneel at our bed. We have to learn that we got to reach for God. God is there with His hand out waiting on us, but He's not going to grab us and pick us up. You've got to go to Him. You've got to run to Him. Sometimes you have to run to these altars. Sometimes you have to demand it. Sometimes you got to say, God, I'm here. Listen. You could be the reason someone comes to Christ in 2019. You could be the light for that father, that mother, that son, that daughter, that grandparent, but it starts with you and your walk with God. Don't call your pastor and say you want to leave the church because the prayer rooms are empty and there are more people in the prayer room at another church. If you want to call the pastor about a prayer room being empty, then why don't you get in it? If you want to start something in the prayer rooms, how about you go yourself? If you want to start praise and worship, start praise and worshiping God. Don't call the pastor saying I'm going to another church because there's more people in the prayer room. You want people in the prayer room, grab them by the hand, take them in the prayer room. Sooner or later, them prayer rooms are going to fill up. Sooner or later, we'll be praying out here because the prayer rooms ain't big enough. We can make excuses all day long of why we like a certain place better. But it all starts with us. It all starts with us. We can point, it's very easy to point fingers at people all day long. Very easy to call someone else out for what they were doing. Just like the men called out that woman and was about to stone her for what she had done. When the Lord said, "Ye without sin cast the first stone." The only difference between them and her was she had gotten caught and they had not been caught. You have no right to judge anybody else for what they've done or what is happening in their life until you look back at yourself. You leave that between them and God. Because all of us have a time to meet with Him. Every one of us. For some of us, tonight could be our night. And if you knew without a shadow of a doubt tonight was your last night, would you worship Him any different? Would you get up and would you run a little harder tonight? Would you jump up and would you flail around? And I mean, my goodness, we got people on the internet that can dance like this, and oh my goodness, it's crazy. But when we do something in the church, when we see someone break out in the Holy Spirit, my goodness, it's crazy. How many of you know who Freddie Steinmark is? I know my sister does. In fall of 2010, a reporter asked University of Texas head coach Royal, said, "Coach, you've won 3 national championships and had 30 All-American players on your team in those years. Which one had the greatest impact on you?" The coach politely replied to the reporter after he sat and thought for a little bit. Out of 30 people, who would this coach choose? The coach replied to the reporter and said, "Freddie Steinmark." Confused, the reporter replied back to the coach and said, "Coach, Freddie wasn't an All-American." And he replied, "He was my All-American." He said, "To me, it's not about the tackles or the stats the player has. It ain't about how many interceptions that player has. It's about his heart and what he represents." Oh my goodness. In 2019, we've got to be a light. We've been chosen as a unique generation. We've got to be the people that goes out there in the slums, in the suburbs. We got to pull them out. With those people out there, they're hurting for God. They're wanting God. But we've got to go and get them. We've got to have our ministries expand. We're working on a bus ministry. I know we are. The story of Freddie Joe Steinmark. He was a starting safety for the University of Texas Longhorns in the 1969 National Championship football team. He led a life that is an inspirational symbol of faith, courage, heart, and perseverance. Steinmark is well known for his legendary performance in his last game when the Texas Longhorns, ranked number 1, played the Arkansas Razorbacks, ranked number 2, a classic battle of longtime rivals. The sports writers have called it the game of the century. After the magical Texas 15-14 victory, a cancerous tumor was discovered in Freddie's left thigh bone, resulting in amputation of his leg. Yet, 20 days later, Steinmark valiantly stood on the sideline on crutches to support the Longhorns in their victory over Notre Dame in that year's national championship Cotton Bowl game. Freddie Joe was the oldest son of the Steinmark family. He was a man of great faith, and in the year and a half after his surgery, focused on his studies, advancing his life, and spending time with his family. The boy could have had a pity party. He went to a high school. He was 5'9", 150 pounds. One of the fastest guys the coach at that high school had ever seen. Said there was no one faster than Freddie, and there was no one that had the heart like Freddie. At the end of his senior year, he didn't have any scholarships. He didn't wonder. He knew that the reason it was because he was so small. Not many 5'9", 150-pound safeties play in college, let alone in the NFL. But that was his dream, to play college and go to the NFL. He ended up getting picked up by the University of Texas, him and a friend named Bobby Mitchell. The coach looked at him that day sitting in his office and he said, "Son," he said, "you remind me a lot of myself. I've watched your film. I've seen all your highlights." He said, "You hit harder than anybody I've seen. You run faster than anybody I've seen. And frankly, I don't care that you're 5'9", 150 pounds. If I had 10 more players like you," he said, "I'd be doing all right." Freddie didn't start until he was a sophomore, but he was the only other sophomore starter he had had since he had been coaching at Texas. Freddie wasn't a very vocal leader. He led by example. He wasn't one to call you out for making a bad play. He was the one that was patting you on the back, saying, "Go get them next time." When in the season where he lost his leg, Freddie had played all 6 games. And then the last 6 were the hardest ones he'd ever had to play. The coaches would see on film that he was favoring that leg, but they thought maybe he was a sprained ankle. They gave him a little rest, play him some more. But not one time did Freddie take himself off the field. Not one time did he say, "Coach, I can't make it." When they were playing Arkansas, the quarterback had saw that Freddie was hurt very bad. And so he picked on him the whole game, because if you ever find a weak link in a defense, that's where you need to hit. Is because he knew that Freddie couldn't keep up with the guy that he was guarding, which was not normally like Freddie. But the assistant coach kept looking at Coach Royal and saying, "We need to pull him, we need to pull him." And he said, "I can't do it." He said, "He's got the most heart on the field." He said, "Even though he's hurting." And then finally, another touchdown thrown over Freddie's head, the coach pulled him. The game was tied. It was at 14 to, or it was, they were actually winning. It was 14-7. The coach puts Freddie back in. They end up scoring. They went for 2. It's 15-14 on the game-winning drive for Arkansas if they were to capitalize on it. The coach put Freddie back in. The assistant coach looked at him like he was crazy, and he said, "This is what the boy's played for his whole career. This is the moment he's played for. I'm putting him in." Freddie makes the game-winning play. He stopped the ball from going into the receiver's hands, and Texas Longhorns won it. His girlfriend looked at him after the game as he was limping very badly out of the locker room and said, "I don't care what you say, you're going to the doctor tomorrow." As Freddie went to the doctor, he found out the shocking truth. He had had a tumor growing in that thigh for about, I don't remember how long that it was said that it was there, but the doctor said it was amazing he was still playing. He had to immediately undergo surgery. And throughout the whole thing, his coach was always there. When the coach found out about the injury and how bad it was of Freddie, the coach drove all the way from New York City all the way back to Texas, leaving his championship award there just because Freddie. That's the impact we can have on people's lives. You don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the loudest. You don't have to be the best at what you do, but you got to have a heart and you got to reach for the things. That's all God's looking for. He's looking for a church that's ready. He's coming back for a church that's ready. And if we're too busy fighting in the congregation amongst ourselves, if we've got our little cliques, we're not ready. The Bible says to love each and everybody. You can't have any bitterness in your heart. When they amputated Freddie's leg, the championship game was a couple weeks away, and he asked the doctor if there was any way he could be there. Doctor said no. Said, it's too dangerous. And he asked the doctor, he said, "How long do I have to live?" He said, "Doc, how many people undergoes what I went through and lives?" He said, "There's been one person." He said, "How long did he live?" He said, "A year." But Freddie didn't let it stop him. He ended up, his buddy that he roomed with at Texas, he would come every day and bring crutches. that Freddie would practice on every day. Against the doctor's orders, they practiced every day. And in 20 days, he was ready for that football game. And as he walked out, he led the team. The crowd gave a standing ovation. It wasn't but a year and a half later, Freddie died. The coach said, out of all the All-Americans I've ever had, Freddie was number one. He told the reporter this story. The reporter's eyes filled with tears, seeing how much one person could have that much of an impact. You've got your shot in 2019 to be that in someone's life. You've got your shot in 2019 to get that husband back in church, to get that grandparent back in church, to get that sister, to get that aunt back in church. But we don't have much time. I know you hear that every year. But tonight could be your last night. This week could be your last week. And if we're throwing it away, playing with the evils of this world, we're going to miss it. And then we're going to try to get God to give us one more chance, and He's going to look at us and say, it was too late. I gave you opportunity after opportunity, and you blew them all. I got to hurry tonight. It takes a lifetime to make a good name and build your reputation. It takes a few seconds to destroy it. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. You don't know what you could say to somebody to break them on the inside. In 2019, don't be that person that cuts people down. Be that person that builds someone, that picks someone up. That struggling family member that can't make ends meet. Your struggling husband that is trying his hardest, but he just can't seem to make it work. First Peter 2:9 says, you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of Him that hath called you out of darkness. In 2019, you were chosen for a reason, to show forth the praises of Him that has called you out. How about in 2019 we make God our New Year resolution? How about in 2019 we make winning someone to God our primary resolution? If each of us won someone to Christ in 2019, we would double in a year. I challenge everyone in 2019 to talk to everybody. Try to get someone here. Do y'all not realize that if each and every one of us wins somebody, we double in a year? If we win 2 people, we triple. It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require stepping out of that comfort zone. But you'll be blessed for it. An unusually low body temperature is called hypothermia. Normal core body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And mild hypothermia sets in at about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. After that, you start dropping in temperature and bad things happen. At 91 degrees, you can experience amnesia. At 82 degrees, you can lose consciousness. Below 70, you are said to have profound hypothermia and death can occur. The lowest body temperature anyone has ever lived is 57.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When you constantly surround yourself by the cold fridge of this world, your body continues to put out all the body heat it has until your body temperature core drops below what it should be. Be the fire that draws someone closer to God this year and wins someone. You can't continue to stay out in the cold. You can't continue to, it is said that you can leave your hand in the water and it takes a lower temperature in that water to freeze you. But if you are constantly out in the cold, if you're constantly messing around with people that ain't on fire for God, they're not right, but if you constantly keep being drawn to them, then you're not going to stay on fire for long. You're not going to have that same walk, that same commitment that you've had. In 2019, we got to be different. In 2019, be that fire that draws someone to God. Be that fire that sets someone else on fire. If we start a fire here, it could spread through North Alabama. It could cover the state. It could cover Tennessee. We might have revival before we even go to Maryville for the men's conference. But it starts with us. It starts with our heart, and it starts here. In closing, I want to read you a story. A guy by the name of Brady Singer signed with the Kansas City Royals this past year. For Christmas, he wrote his mom and dad a letter. And this is what the letter said. Dear Mom and Dad, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done to help me reach my dreams. From Woodley Field to Kauffman Stadium. There's absolutely no way I could have done all this by myself. Both of you constantly took off work and spent every dime you made just to put a smile on my face. My smile and appreciation for both of you has never stopped, and it never will. I will always remember traveling around Florida for baseball trying to cheaply eat and save money, but I never could because you always wanted me to have the best stuff to help me pursue my dream. The money you both spent on traveling gear, hotels, food, and all those Gatorades I drank is much more than I can ever give you. But there's something I want to give to you. I'm paying off the loan from the bank, and also I paid off all your debt as well. Now, instead of trying to save money every weekend to replace the savings account you drained on traveling to my baseball games, you can spend it on yourselves because you deserve the very best. I want you both to know how much I appreciate you, and none of this would be possible without you. Your giving hearts helped to shape my tiny dream into a reality. I love you more than you could ever imagine, and I will never forget what you have done. Now let's go celebrate Merry Christmas. The boy posted a video on Twitter of his mom as she read this letter, and she immediately started crying. She showed the husband started crying. We may not have millions of dollars that we can give to God to try to help us out, but God's only asking for one thing. He's asking for us. He's asking for all of us. I would love to give my parents what this boy gave his, because I know the sacrifices they've made for me. But what about the sacrifices God made for you? He is our Father. He is the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. He created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. What about the sacrifices He made? It may be a small thing to some of us. But if we could, let's just bow our heads and let's just thank God. Thank God for another year. Thank you for 2019 tonight. Every one of us could have had an opportunity to where we're not here today. Some of us have lived through 2 or 3 accidents, and we're still standing to tell the goodness of God. What about when they met that beggar outside of the walls, and he said, silver and gold have I none. We may not have silver and gold, but we've got a heart and we've got a soul, and that's all God wants. He wants us to be sold out to Him in 2019. Be that reason that kid comes to Christ. Be that reason that marriage all of a sudden starts clicking. If you're having financial problems, give it to God. He only asks for a small thing in return. He asks for you to be His. For you to be His. Not straddling a fence. Not torn between the world and between Him. He's asking for you to be sold out to Him. Each and every one of us have been called for a purpose. If you've got a loved one right now that is not in church, if you have a loved one right now you would love to see in church by the end of 2019, I'm asking you to come up front. And I'm asking you to raise your hands and give it to God tonight. Nobody looking around, heads bowed, eyes closed. It's just you and God right now. It's just you and God. You know that family member. Say their name out loud. Let God know He already knows, but He wants you to say it. He wants you to know that He's going to take care of it tonight. He wants to take that burden off of you. That family member is one call away from being in this church. All you got to do is give it to God. Let Him take it. Let Him take that burden off of you.